Welcome from the track this weekend, this Friday. Quite foggy outside. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone celebrating yesterday. Hope you're enjoying your holiday. And here on No Plan B podcast, we have a very special episode this weekend. Normally, this is a platform where we want to encourage young people in the States obsessed with the love of basketball to reach their goals, becoming professional sportsmen over here in Europe, probably. And I'm here to tell you, you do not necessarily have to be a pro basketball player to make it over here if you want to express the love of playing basketball and getting paid for it. This week, we have a guest who made a very special his own way into basketball. Our guest is Miles-Schmidt-Scheuber, who is a basketball broadcaster on Eurobasket. He announced or commented games in every league over here in Europe. He is well known through so many countries here, especially in Germany, of course, for broadcasting, being a basketball broadcaster. He lives in Frankfurt, coming out of the suburbs of Boston, Massachusetts. He is a very genuine, very unique guy who made his dream of getting paid with basketball true. He was a hockey player in youth, but I will not tell you too much about his story because he did that very beautifully on our interview. So I will leave you with Miles-Schmidt-Scheuber.
The way that we played basketball this year, the way that we trained was extremely intense.
I mean, it's a win-win. You're improving your performance by enhancing your recovery when using PSR, and you're adding extra years onto your career.
Miles has been reporting about basketball for 18 years and doing play-by-play for 17 years. He has called 600 plus games and interviewed 1,400 players since 2005, including Derek Williams, Larry Brown, Jordan Crawford, Pascal Roller, Maxi Kleber, Isaiah Hartenstein, and Isaac Bonga. He has called Euroleague, Euro Cup, Euro Challenge, FIBA Euro Cup, BBL, Pro A, Pro B, Regionalliga, NBBL, and JBBL since 2005. He also called the 2019 Under-14 final and twice called 2 games on the same day in 2 different cities. His play-by-play idol was the legendary voice of the Boston Celtics, Johnny Most, and his broadcasting role models are Brian Gumbel, Bob Lobel, and Bob Costas. His book, The Real Deal, will be released in 2021, and it has 100 plus chapters on his life in German basketball. Some chapters are about Luka Doncic, Derek Allen, John Lure, Marco Pesic, Tyler Honeycutt, and other chapters are called Walking Encyclopedia, No Days Off, Excuse me, but are you a player or player's best friend?
Happy was in Germany. Bolin, pull-up jumper, and he hits it. Skylar Bolin, he's been one of the few bright spots for the Swedish team.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the No Plan B podcast. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. For those of you that do celebrate it, very good to see you, Renee. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy that I have the Bob Costas. The Marv Albert. I can't say enough about this guy. This guy is the spokesman. He's the voice, and he's really such a great dude. Ladies and gentlemen, Miles-Schmidt-Scheuber. Welcome to the No Plan B podcast, brother.
Thank you, Joe, my man. Thank you, Renee, for inviting me. It's an honor to be here because, I'm not a professional player. So what am I doing here?
Well, let me explain to you the reason why you're here. You're here because you're the spokesman. Well, first and foremost, I'll let you explain it to the people because you've called many games. You've written wonderful articles about not only top flight, great former NBA guys, current NBA guys, top flight pro basketball players in Europe, in every league possible that's here, EuroLeague, and I really love you, man, because you're the voice for underdogs. And since I'm an underdog, you have spoken for me, and you've spoken for a lot of guys, man, who really didn't have a good chance at pro basketball, but somehow, some way, they did it. And you've been a really great voice for us, man. So salute to you, and I appreciate you. That's why you're here, my friend.
Thank you so much, Joe, for inviting me. And it really has become my favorite thing to talk about is giving the guys that start at the bottom or trying to work their way up the basketball ladder, giving those guys a platform, letting them tell their story. That's really my most favorite articles I like to write, because it's those guys that no one really knows about as much. They're not so much in the spotlight, but hey, they're professional players. Why can't people report about them? And I just love doing it. And each player has their own story, and it's really always great. And I mean, you do the same thing as I with your podcast. You always showcasing guys that start at the bottom, guys that work their way up. And I've interviewed a lot of those guys myself, so we both know what these guys have gone through. But I mean, I'm not a professional player, but still, I mean, I feel for those guys, because a lot of those guys are so talented, but sometimes they're just not in the right place at the right time. Sometimes it's just maybe a bad injury, and a lot of those guys, I mean, Joe, in the Regionalliga Pro Bs, they can play at a higher level, but there's just not enough spots.
Exactly. It's very competitive.
And I think that qualifies him perfectly as one of the best guests we can have on this show, because there's so much we can talk about. And we'd love to know, like, how did you get the idea of doing that? Like, what was your first connection to basketball, and how did all of that start for you?
Well, I mean, should I start a little about my childhood, or?
Of course, whatever you want. Tell us your story. We're here to listen to your story today.
Well, basically, I actually was a big-time hockey player. I mean, I love basketball. I mean, I'm from Boston, so I mean, you got to love the Celtics, Bruins, Red Sox, Patriots. So I liked all those sports, but I grew up with hockey. I played hockey in grade school, high school, and you couldn't play basketball and hockey at the same time. So, I mean, I picked hockey, but I always played basketball with the basketball players, at recess. And on the side, I was following the Boston Celtics, the NBA. And, but then when I came to Germany back in 2001, I worked at AFN, Armed Forces Network in Frankfurt. And that's basically where my basketball career in Germany started. In 2004, I told them there, I want to cover the Skyliners from Frankfurt. They're like, no, you can't do that. This is about the Army. We want to just have you cover Army related things. I was like, I was hard, and I got my wish, and I was able to report about the Skyliners, and that was my start. And then in 2005, the Skyliners asked if I wanted to be the play-by-play for them on radio, and here I am today. I'm still doing it. I did radio, and I've been doing live streams for like 6-7 years, and that's basically how I got into basketball. I started Eurobasket in 2008, so I've been covering basketball for Eurobasket for more than 10 years. And of course, I try to feature my German Hoops site, which is my second site, because that's where I have a big archive. I say a big library there where everything I ever did you can read about. But Eurobasket, after 30 posts, they disappear. They're gone because they don't have an archive there where they have every story that was ever published. So that's pretty much how I got into basketball reporting and writing, basically in Frankfurt in 2004.
Man, that is beautiful. That is really beautiful. Well, he's being humble, ladies and gentlemen. This guy's called, how many games have you called? Because this number is so remarkable. I don't want to make any mistakes here.
I think I'm at 618 now. I mean, I have everything on a piece of paper. Every game I've did. My first game was March 2005 BBL game against BG Karlsruhe, and since then, I've called from EuroLeague down to Regionalliga, and I've called the NBBL, the youth under 19, and the JBBL, the youth under 16. And I was really proud last year to call a game, the under 14 championship game in Frankfurt, which had Eintracht Frankfurt, Fraport Skyliners. And that was just very special for me because Isaac Bonga from the NBA, the Washington Wizards, his little brother, Joshua, won the title. And he's now on the Pro B team, on the farm team of Frankfurt, 15 years old. And he scored 7 points in this last game, and he's the next great thing. A lot of people say he's better than Isaac, who's in the NBA right now. So I'm covering another Bonga, so that's it just keeps going on for me.
Oh man, that is great, man. If you don't mind, I would really like to touch on your childhood just for a second.
Yeah,
because
please. I have stories about the Celtics.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I want to talk about really quick, because
yeah, sure.
The thing is, back in the days when I was coming up, I wanted to be Dominique Wilkins, and as you well know, I'm a lifelong Golden State Warriors fan, and
right.
As you well know, those Celtics teams were the teams that killed my guy Dominique and had me crying all the time. So shout out to Larry Bird, but you have a great story about the legendary Mr. Cowens. I'd really love to hear about that guy.
But let me just before I forget about Dominique Wilkins, let me just put it this way. I was very blessed, to be able to live in a good area of Boston, the western suburbs, and just to tell you, how close to who I was living near to. But in the 90s, Dominique Wilkins lived about 3 miles away from me. I found out where his house was, but I never had the courage to, be an idiot and, go up his long driveway and ring his doorbell. But actually, I saw him in a Walgreens in my town. He was shopping, and of course, I got an autograph of him. And only about a half a mile away from Dominique Wilkins, Tom Brady had a house. But
oh my God!
He lived there for about 4 or 5 years, from like 2007 to maybe 2013. But I was in Germany, so I found out years later that he had lived there. But then later he moved to Brookline, where he had this huge house on the country club. But now, as everyone knows, he got traded to the Buccaneers, so he sold that house. But that's my little stories about him. Before, one more thing. Also, the town over, the legendary Tiny Archibald lived.
Oh yeah, I remember him for sure.
But anyway, Dave Cowens, 2-time NBA champion. He was my friggin' neighbor. All right, he was my neighbor when I was a little kid growing up. He lived 4 houses down, and let me say, he had real bad taste in cars. All right, he had this beat up pickup truck, that you would have never thought that an NBA star would drive. He had this old, like Oldsmobile, convertible that he just loved driving up and down our street. And, he felt so proud of it. I was a little kid. I was thinking, what kind of taste is this guy? But he had a cool motorcycle. And so basically my quick story, the first guy that I really idolized as a broadcaster, Joe, you probably know him, Bryant Gumbel.
Yeah, for sure.
Bryant Gumbel, because I remember he would report about all the NFL scores, late 70s, early 80s. So one morning, it was December 1980. I was getting ready. I don't know what grade I was in, 3rd or 4th grade. So I turned on the TV, and somehow I didn't have the Flintstones on. I turned on NBC, and I saw they were going live to Dave Cowens' house, a big announcement. I was like, oh my God, Bryant Gumbel is going to be down the road from me. I got my jacket. I took my bike, couple, feet down, 4 houses down. I went down. I rung the doorbell. Dave Cowens opened the door. I looked up at him. He smiled at me. I was like, please let me meet Bryant Gumbel. He said, come on in. So wow. Bryant Gumbel was there, and he was getting ready to do his little story. Dave Cowens was retiring, and he wrote me the coolest autograph that I still have today. And I was so flashed. That was my big moment with Bryant Gumbel. And of course, with Dave Cowens, I wasn't so much in his house back then, but always whenever he drove down the street, me and my best friend, Tom, we would wave at him. He would wave back, and he would have those cookouts with the Celtics after the season was over. I remember Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, Cedric Maxwell, all those guys were in his yard. And yeah, I mean, it was great times as a kid. I mean, it was a field day for me, Joe. I just, as a little kid, how it is when you idolize great players, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that.
Man.
That's my childhood.
Man, that's beautiful, man. And, shout out to Mr. Cowens, because what a great guy to just, he knew that you idolized Mr. Gumbel, and he's such a great guy. Say, come on in and, and meet your guy. And I tell you this, man, I'm really happy I wasn't with you when you saw Dominique Wilkins, because I probably would just ran up and hugged that guy, and they would have probably charged me with an assault or something, because I just love that guy, bro.
You would have bear hugged him too much, huh?
Definitely, bro. Definitely. Jump on in there, Renee. Jump on in there, buddy.
Go ahead.
That is super inspirational. From that point, or from there, would you say it's a great thing if you have the chance to meet your idol or someone that is a big role model for you? Do you think that can really change your whole, your emotions and your does it help you on your journey? Because there's ups and
I think
downs all the time
I have
when you're a kid playing basketball or whatever you're chasing, what your dream is.
I have to tell you, I had this in the early '80s. I was an autograph junkie. All right. I mean, I I I I went to the hotels in Boston. I got hockey, basketball, baseball. I'm kind of mad now that I didn't get more autographs, but I think my dealings at a young age with professional athletes kind of helped me for my future. I mean, like now it's like, I mean, I wouldn't be afraid to go up to some guy and you know and for my job reporting, and I mean, I call up guys, I call up guys for interviews in hotels now even. And I mean, I'm not afraid, I mean, people they don't know I'm calling. There I am. I want to interview. Come on. I'm so dedicated. I want to interview these people that I'll do anything, and I think my experiences at a young age, like I just said, not being afraid and just going up to these guys I don't know, asking for autographs helped me now for my career where, I'll go up to anybody. I don't care who they are. I want to interview them. I want to get a story. That I think that helped me at a young age to be able to do what I do now.
Do you feel like it gets harder nowadays to get to people with social media and everything around, and like it's not that easy to connect with someone? Or on one hand it's easier because you can find everyone online now, but on the other hand, if you have someone who is probably better known or like more famous, it's harder to get to them. Would you agree, or how is it for your situation?
I mean, obviously, I know two players that know LeBron James personally. I mean, Drew Joyce and Romeo Travis, they played in the BBL many years ago. I'm not going to go to them and say, hey, I want to interview LeBron James. That's going a little too far, because I think LeBron James, he's got a lot of things to do each day. And if someone's going to interview him, it's going to be the real Bob Costas. But no, I think it's easier now with social media. Most of my interview work I do over Facebook, because I can reach a lot of people, and my network is growing every day. And I interviewed Derek Williams 2 weeks ago. He's hooking me up with a big time European player, probably one of the best in the EuroLeague that isn't American. I'm not gonna say his name right now, because when I do interview him, it'll probably be online next week. But I think it's easier now because you can find these people over Twitter, over Instagram, over Facebook, and my network is so good. Just before this, a player I have on Bamberg, Chase Feeler, I asked him for another player that I want to interview from Bamberg. 1 minute later, he sent me his number. It's so easy. It's a breeze. It's really. I mean, I have no problems. I mean, I bet you if I asked Joe, I'm trying to think on the top of my head. It's one of those guys you played back in the day in the late '80s. Joe, I want to talk to him. Hook me up. I'm sure you could help me out somehow, because you have a good network. So I mean.
Oh yeah, Joe has a good network too. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, no, it's definitely easier now. It's easier.
Well, let me ask you this question. I'd love to ask all of our guests this question. What advice would you give to the young guy right now who's in Boston, coming up in Boston? He loves hockey, he loves baseball, he loves basketball, he loves all these different sports like you did, and he's thinking about, maybe one day he could be a reporter, or he could be, that the next great thing. You know what I mean? A guy that looks up to you. What advice would you give that guy? Take school serious, or what other advice would you give guys like that? The guys who want to be professional writers like yourself.
Well, it's a lot different now than it was maybe 20, 30 years ago, because I mean, I always think back when I read, like, one of the great Boston writers, Dan Shaughnessy from the Boston Globe, who I read, I've been reading since over 30 years. I wonder how he did his work like in the 80s. I mean, nowadays it's so easy for reporters to gather information over the internet. Back in the 80s, 90s even, these guys had to somehow get their information with no internet. So, I mean, I think nowadays, in a way, it's maybe harder because there's probably a lot more competition now. But on the other hand, I would just tell a young guy coming up now, just to like I think it isn't any different in sports, just to chase your dream. If you really want to be a reporter, I mean, I think sky's the limit. I mean, if you have good people skills, I mean, if you can write, I think, any person can do it. You just got to be dedicated. I mean, I think a lot separates from the way I do it than from other reporters. I think a lot has to do with dedication. I'm so dedicated. I mean, it seems to like grow for me, like daily almost. It's like I want to do more and more. And I think dedication, you have to really be dedicated and you really want to do it. I think that'll help a person more. If you're just kind of like, I don't know, maybe I want to be a reporter, maybe I want to do something different, maybe something, in business, you got to be totally dedicated. If you're really dedicated, I think any person can go their path, whatever they want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And ladies and gentlemen, he's also being humble because Eurobasket is like for every pro basketball player I know, Eurobasket is really like the Bible of basketball. Everybody knows you. Everyone says you're a great guy. And by the way, I talked to Tyrone McCoy earlier today, and we were talking about you. So I'm pretty sure that you enjoyed it when he played down there in Frankfurt.
Yeah, no, actually, I wasn't already in Frankfurt. He was there in 2001, but I called the game, 2008, Game 5, quarterfinal BBL playoffs, Frankfurt against Bayer Leverkusen, and it was the game where Tyrone doesn't like to hear this. So maybe the next time you talk to Tyrone McCoy and you want to kind of, annoy him a little, remind him about Game 5, 2008, because basically Leverkusen had the last play and they could have won the game. McCoy went to the hoop. He'll say he got fouled. Of course
he got fouled.
Yeah, but, the refs didn't see it, and, Frankfurt won the game. And, of course, the legendary Pascal Roller iced 2 free throws to win the game, and Frankfurt advanced to the semifinals against Telekom Baskets Bonn. But that's my story with Tyrone. I've interviewed him over the years. Great guy. Yeah, he was a great player in his time in Oldenburg. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure, Joe, if you mention my name to many Americans, they'll know who I am. I mean, I probably interviewed them,
Yeah, without a doubt. How do you see basketball moving forward? I mean, you've covered a few games during this COVID time, and does it feel weird to you when you're sitting there and you're calling the game? I mean, do you have to wear your mask, or I mean, how does it work now? I mean, I'm not sure because I haven't been able to go to a game.
Very, very strange. It's very different. Obviously, with no fans, I mean, it's a lot quieter. Actually, a few Röhrndorf Dragons games I did, they actually was still at a time where they had like 100 or 200, 300 fans. Frankfurt Pro B, they didn't have any fans. So I actually was able to do the games without masks, but it's obviously not the same. I mean, you can hear players, which is pretty cool. You can hear the coaches, but I mean, it's not the same without fans. I mean, I don't like it at all. So, I mean, for me, it's definitely thumbs down. I'm just waiting for this all to end and to have the arenas full again.
Yeah, exactly.
And we all
jump on in there, Renee.
We all do wait for this, and funny thing is, we started this whole thing. I guess like on the day when everything got shut down here, 13th of March.
Right.
That was our first episode, and I was at that time in the Philippines working, and
you were in the Philippines. Wow.
Yeah, for a couple of weeks for video shooting for I do workout videos and stuff, and I was just on the way back, and I came back on the next weekend, and everything, like, you remember, I guess you have been in Germany, I guess, at that time.
I was, yes.
Yeah, and like day after day, something new came out, and then everything got shut down, and we all didn't know what's going to happen, and then we got all those ups and downs, and we interviewed so many players about their stories, and they were so diverse, so many different stories. What happened? Like guys flying back for family, probably don't know what to do. Some stayed because they probably have a wife and kids here, or they just decided to stay because they felt safe in Germany. And so this was like all of the time, like throughout. We got, I think, 33 episodes now out online, and throughout all of this time, this was like the thing that we were talking about. And we feel the same. We want this to end as soon as possible. And but it brought up also a lot of, like Joe told me, you can tell your story again, like how blessed he felt with us doing it. We were able to get a lot more players probably because of that onto our show who had time. They were sitting around at home not knowing what to do.
Right.
So it was a curse and a blessing too. So
yeah, a big thumbs up for you guys for this podcast. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there, but there's no podcast like this, just featuring those, players, that are starting from the bottom, moving their way up. I think it's a great platform for those guys to tell their story, and every story is interesting, and keep it going, keep it going.
Yeah, that was the intentional idea. There's, basketball, everyone knows those pro guys with millions of dollars and everything, and there's another side to basketball, especially in Germany here, and especially in the lower leagues where people do not own a lot of money, and they have to fight for their, I think fight for their life is a little bit exaggerated, but it's definitely the other side than what most people think about pro basketball.
Sure. And like I said, that's why I said in the beginning that I really appreciate you, Miles, because you don't have to do that. The thing is, he's being humble. He's really being humble for our listeners, because Miles is big time, so he doesn't need the lower tier players. He doesn't have to put their story out. He can be just as content putting out all the stories of all the great players playing in the first division here in Germany and Euroleague and all these other big leagues. But that's why I have so much respect for him, because he looks out for the underdog. And by the way, I'm one of those underdogs, so of course it's a personal thing. So we appreciate you. But let me say this real quick though, Miles. I know that you called the game in the Telecom Dome, and that's like a really big dome. And I mean, it was empty, so wasn't that just like weird? I know you were sitting there looking around like, oh my God, like there's no one here.
Oh, what you mean the Telecom Dome? When was that?
When you call the game in the dome, didn't you? I think it was. Did you call some EuroLeague games? I think it was.
No, I didn't. I didn't call any games in the Telecom Basket Dome for a while now, because that's BBL. I didn't.
Oh, okay. I thought in the beginning of the. I'm sorry. I thought in the beginning of the. In the beginning of the.
That was where Mario Chalmers and Keith Langford were there. That's that group game AEK. But no, I was just there reporting. I wrote an article for that. I didn't call the game.
Okay. But I mean, it was also weird, right? Because it was just empty.
That's how. Yeah, that was. I based my article on that. Just the first time being in an arena where there was no fans. Yeah, you're right. That's it was pretty strange. It was pretty strange. So
that's tough. So I mean, what do you see downrange? Do you see yourself calling maybe some more BBL games, or are you gonna keep doing the whole racket of just calling all the games you can, or are you gonna focus on maybe youth basketball? What do you see down the line?
I try to do everything, but I mean, Joe, you know my story. I mean, that's why I think that's one reason why I like doing the doing stories on the guys that have the chips on their shoulders, because I'm kind of the same way. I know what they're going through. I mean, my story with Magenta Sport. I think I proved myself to be able to call games for them. Why I'm not calling games for them is kind of hard to comprehend. I mean, ask anyone that's heard my games, but for some reason they don't take me. And I mean, it's kind of hard, because I want to be able to be on a bigger platform than what I am. I mean, I'm happy what I'm doing, but to have the chance to call those games, would be nice, but it hasn't happened so far. And that's kind of why I have a chip on my shoulder,
Exactly. I mean, but it always boils down to the same thing. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's political and blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Because the thing is, I mean, let's keep it real. You can ask, and I know this for a fact, because I know a lot of pro basketball players here in Germany, and there's not one American right now. There maybe, I don't know, down the line, there may be some European players, I'm not sure, but I know for a fact that every American that plays in that first league, all of them know who you are. So if you're sitting there calling the game, it would just be normal if you were sitting there calling the game. It wouldn't be out of place.
Just to give you an example, it's on YouTube. You put in Basketball Aid Iowa back in the summer 2017. I had the rare opportunity to call a game. It was a special game for Basketball Aid, and the Hans Bate, who's a good friend of mine. He put together a group of young German players that played against the University of Iowa that had Tyler Cook on the team. He's already played in the NBA last season for the Denver Nuggets. And I called that game. And later on YouTube, there was some guy from Iowa saw the game and he just posted like, "Hey, this guy is really good. He's better than the play-by-play guy for the University of Iowa." I mean, come on,
Wow,
I will not.
Exactly.
I will not go into any games unprepared. I'm always prepared. I mean, I study the players. I'll know everything, and that's how I go in the games. That's what I do. I want to be the best at what I do, and I have to be prepared, and that's what I do. I will study everything and know what the hell I'm talking about.
Right. Well, don't worry about it. Your time's going to come, my friend. And believe me, once I win the lotto and once I go to Vegas and get really rich, man, believe me, I'm going to put you on. We're going to call our own games. We're going to start our own league, and you're going to be our guy.
Thank you.
Renee's going to be thinking for me as usual. You know what I mean? And I'll be the entertainment, and you'll be our guy, without a doubt. Jump in there, Renee.
There's a nice chapter in my book about Magenta Sports. So, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Awesome.
Miles, you were starting this whole thing with you're not sure if you're the great guest, and I think we had a great talk here about a lot of subject that we would, this is not the normal type of story we have, because most of our guests that we had were pro basketball players somewhere in Europe, and that was really nice to talk to you.
But Joe, you forgot my book, Joe.
Pardon me?
You forgot my book, Joe. I wanted to talk about my book coming out.
Then go ahead.
I'm sorry. Oh, man. Yeah, we can. Of course, we can plug your book, man. No problem. But I just had to make sure that I got in that story with Mr. Cowens, because I love NBA basketball so much, and I love your Celtics. Even though, like I said, I'm a lifelong Warriors fan, but because of Kevin Garnett, I always would love your Celtics and Larry Bird. I mean, the legend Larry. Right. You don't need to see anymore. So please tell us about your book.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, you have a chapter in it. You're in it.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, man. Hallelujah, brother. Respect.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm humbled.
I mean, it's just basically, it's probably going to be called The Real Deal. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I thought that was a good title. It's first going to be released in German. We wanted to release it by the end of the year, but because of COVID, we think because of marketing, we should wait a little until everything clears a little, maybe, probably next year sometime. And it's just basically a book about my 17, 18-year career. I have a lot of, topics in the book about, what I've experienced. Obviously, a lot of chapters about players. If I'll just name a few, obviously Ademola Okulacha, like a Derek Allen, Isaiah Hartenstein. Who do we have here? Justin Cobbs, Larry Brown, the legendary coach. Luka Doncic is in the book. Marko Pezic from Bayern Munich. Then I have like Pascal Roller. That's a given. And you know who else has a chapter in the book?
Oh.
Fabian Bayerlein.
Nice.
Fabi.
Fabi. I know Fabi. Yeah. Fabi the agent. What a great guy.
That's right.
Shout out to Fab.
That's right. He deserves a chapter. He's got it. Quickly, let me just say, then I have obviously some nice chapters about, not players, but let me just read some of the titles. Buzzer beaters, chip on my shoulder. Excuse me, are you a player? Living room break. Miles basketball minute. Player's best friend. No days off. Nicknames. Sidekicks. Walking encyclopedia. Mr. Eurobasket legend and player quotes. There you go, Joe. That's my book. That's only about 20 chapters, 25, 30. There are going to be 100 chapters in my book.
Wow, that's awesome, man.
Is it you already finished it? So you're just waiting for distribution?
It's finished. Okay. It's finished. Written. It'll probably be like 250 to 300 pages. Wow. And we're waiting until this whole COVID-19 slows down, and then it's a little red tape. It's going to probably be an ebook, but I'm going to also obviously have copies too, maybe 100 to 200 copies. But if it sells well, we'll see where it goes. So I'm really looking forward to the release of this, and I think it'll be a must read for anyone that really wants to see what a reporter has gone through in German basketball. It's really interesting.
Oh, that is awesome, man. Really, really beautiful. And I'm really humbled to be a part of it. And shout out to Fabi, man. Fabi's my guy, man. I did back in the days, I did a drug prevention program, and we had an all-star game in Bayreuth, and Baggy was there, man, and we connected there. And I told him, I said, at that time he was chasing his dreams, you know, and I knew he wanted to be an agent, but I didn't say anything about him being an agent or anything. I just looked in his face and said, hey man, whatever your dream is, my guy, you chase it, you hunt it down, bro, and you grab it, man. And I tell you what, and now he's a well-known agent, so you know that's what it is, man.
Yeah, Fabi's a real good guy, and he really knows a lot about basketball. So he definitely deserved. We have a very special relationship, so that's why I had to give him a chapter.
Yeah, beautiful. And on top of all that, he cares. He cares about players. You know what I mean? That's what I really dig about it.
Yep. Joe, before we go, can I show one more picture? I want to see if you know who it is.
Of course.
Of course.
Oh, come on, man. Wait a minute. That's one of those King boys. That's either Bernard King or Albert King, but it looks like the legendary Bernard.
Joe, that's Bernard King. And I'm going to say, tell you something. This was after Game 7 of the 1984 Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics. Larry Bird and co. went on to beat the New York Knicks. Bernard King had just played his heart out. He comes out. Back then in the day, they friggin' came out of there was this bank right next to the Boston Garden, and they just came out and the bus was parked in front. You would never see something like this nowadays. Now all the teams leave from the underground garages. Bernard King just played his heart out, got beat in a Game 7, and look at that smile.
Look at that smile for that, yeah.
Sees this little excited kid there who wants a picture with him, and look at that smile. He had just lost the game.
Awesome. That's a $1 million smile.
You can't tell me LeBron James or any of those big shots would have a smile like that after they just lost the game. I mean,
that's a $1 million smile, bro.
Look at Bernard King. What a guy.
Oh, man, what a great player. For all of our young listeners, please go Google him. That guy was a walking bucket. He went to work. You better believe it.
And for all those that don't know, this guy was like a Jordan in scoring. He averaged like 32 points in 83, 84. And he was just a great player. It was just a shame he didn't play for a winning team. I mean, for a team that could have won it all, you know. But yeah.
For sure. Yeah, most definitely. Anything you want to add to that, Renee?
No, I have to look that up. Am I too young to know that? Probably.
Yeah, for sure. But no biggie. All you gotta do is Google, baby.
Nice. I will do that.
Google doctor.
All right, Miles. Thank you so much for being here, for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, guys.
Great talk.
It was an honor, and you know, I really appreciate being able to tell my story. And really, it's you know, it means a lot that me as a non-player being able to be on your show. It means a lot. I thank you from my heart, Joe and Renee, for inviting me.
Oh, not a problem. Hey, man, let me tell you something. You're a major player in this pro basketball business out here, my guy. So we appreciate you. And we're definitely, when you have time, we'll invite you back and we'll get you on for part 2.
Thank you. Then
when your book is live, then we promote that.
Thank you, Renee. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the next podcast that you guys are going to produce.
Awesome.
So, Joe, I have one more story about Robert Parrish. Remember back in the day, part of the Big Three with Larry Bird and Kevin McHale of the Boston Celtics? Yeah, back in the day, this is actually a story about my brother. He had a friend, and he lived right across the street from my first elementary school, 10-acre school. And back at that time, they had a pretty big house, and they rented out a room to a female student from Wellesley College, same place where Hillary Clinton went to. And every now and then, this fancy car would drive by, and this big black guy would step out of the car and go into the house. That big black guy was Robert Parrish. And the friend of my brother, who was maybe 8 or 9, would hear these peculiar, strange things coming from her room. So he would put his ear to the wall, and he heard in this very low voice from Robert Parrish, "Hey, baby, is that the way you like to do it? I like doing it Dougie style." That's my Robert Parrish story for you, Joe.